So variables in JavaScript allow us to label a piece of code so that we can reuse it later. It kind of stores it in the browser's memory temporarily so that we can use it later. So open up your JavaScript folder and go ahead and open up the index.html file in a browser if you don't have it open already. So you should have that open, and then what we'll do is we'll just open up this entire JavaScript folder in Sublime Text. And we can do that on a Mac just by dragging over Sublime Text, and there you have it, and you'll have both files that are in that folder kind of at your disposal. Or you could just simply go up to, make sure you have Sublime Text open, and then just go up to File and say Open, and then find the folder where we that's called JavaScript and just hit Open that way. Close out this extra one here. So let's go into our index.html file and just look at variables. What we'll do is embed our JavaScript inside this opening and closing script tag. So in here we can type out a special keyword in JavaScript, and it's var, and that means we're about to declare a variable name or a label for some code. So let's come up with that label name. We'll just say, call it name for now. And then you want this equal sign, just one equal sign, and then whatever piece of code you want to label as name, we put it to the right of the equal sign. Now, you'll notice in JavaScript we have what we call data types, and you'll see this amongst a lot of programming languages. So one of the data types is a string. And string is just basically text. Think of it as, any kind of text. But in order for JavaScript to understand a string, it has to have quotation marks. So you say quotation marks, and then you can put a name in there, like John Doe. You could do one word, 2 words with a space. It doesn't really matter. So once I save that, we can use this special alert method or function, and we'll just put name inside of it with a semicolon. Now if I save it and I refresh this page, you'll see it alerts out the name now. So that's really cool. We're able to label a piece of code, like a string in this case, and then reuse it later in our code. And this isn't the best real-world example, but down the line when you're working on a project and you have many lines of code, you may label something with a variable like that and then reuse it many lines down later. And so that's where it kind of comes into play. Now, you can also put numbers in here, right? So that's another data type, is we can work with numbers in JavaScript. You could say 2 plus 2. We can actually do math, and we'll just rename this to maybe calculation to be a little more sensible. Remember, you always want that semicolon afterwards. And now let's alert out the calculation variable. And what this is going to do is basically it's going to alert out and see what is stored inside a variable called calculation. In this case, 2 plus 2. So when we refresh, there you go, you get the result. It says 4. And I just want to point out something as well. There's this idea of variable declaration. So that's where you're just going to declare that you will be using this at some point. You can just write it out like this, variable. You can stack as many as you want. You'll see developers do that. They might put that at the top of their code and say, okay, all they're doing by doing this is saying, we're going to be using these variables somewhere later in our code. We're just declaring it now. We're namespacing it now. So that's one way you'll see it. You may also see it like this. That's just a shorthand way to say, okay, we're going to have this variable as well as this variable. And then there's variable initialization. That term, all that means is what we just did, is where we say, okay, variable name, we'll set it to John. Okay, so that's initialization. We're actually saying that this is going to be, the variable, and then we can use it later in our code like we did, like that. If I refresh, you'll see there we go, it comes up with John. And then lastly, you'll see variable assignment. So sometimes if they do simply just declare the variable, you don't necessarily have to go back again down in the code and write calculation equals 3 times 3. You can leave the var keyword off and just write it like that. And that's just basic assignment without the initialization or anything, because we already declared it up here. So that's a little bit about variables and just a few ways you can kind of organize them.